Hey everyone, welcome to the 14 Winds podcast, where we talk about UFOs and all of its related high strangeness. I go by the name of Bones, and with us is the notorious Ramex.
Hey everybody.
Hey Ram. So we're living through extraordinary times, people. We were going to talk about alien abductions, but everyone's got drones on the mind, and we're talking about, I guess we'll call them the New Jersey drones, but they're being spotted everywhere.
So we've had obviously a lot of reports from New Jersey, a lot of video, ABC recorded in Orb. We could talk about a ton of the evidence, but I think everyone is seeing it. Everyone is very aware of it. We should talk about some of the countries where these drones have been seen other than the U.S. They were seen in England and Lakenheath. They were seen in Russia. They were seen in China. They were seen in Italy. And then there's all the domestic cases.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of, just in the past couple of days, seems to be widespread. I've heard, Southern California. I haven't heard anything in Chicago, like in the Midwest. Have you?
No, I haven't heard anything from the Midwest. Tennessee, I guess.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
That would be considered Midwest. Yeah.
And so,
but Illinois, no. Northern Midwest, no. I haven't heard anything. But we should talk about how we're calling these or standardizing these.
Yeah, right. So it's the mainstream media is sticking with the term drone to describe these, and you can't blame them too much because some of them do seem to have lighting on them, which is fairly new, right? I mean, they look like navigation lights.
Yeah, and those look like drones or planes or helicopters because red, green, and white are FAA standards,
right?
And then the red and green is blinking. So, but as far as UAP mimicking those lights, that has been known for quite some time, and no one is really sure. It's a great question as to why UAP have lights, but they do.
Right.
And in this case, why would these drones, which are doing things unlawful, why would they do this and put lights on themselves?
Yeah.
And those lights are burning out whatever their power source presumably is faster. So they're performing extraordinary maneuvers for drones. We don't know of drones that can maintain the altitudes that these supposedly drones have achieved, as well as the amount of time that they've stayed aloft.
Right.
So they're not drones. I mean, unless you can show me a drone that behaves and works like the way all of these reports, including law enforcement, are reporting, they're not drones.
Right.
And one of the great questions that the Tedesco brothers, who are UAP researchers and scientists, and they've done some really cool stuff in terms of how to spot and identify UAP, and they've apparently been contacted by DHS. So That's great. I mean, I'm finally good.
Right.
Reach out to some experts.
Right.
Find out if you're dealing with UAP. So, but one of the things that they said at top of their list, the questions that journalists, everyone needs to ask is, what makes you think these are drones?
Right.
Why are you calling them drones? You don't know where they're from. You haven't, what about these says drone to you? Nothing.
Right. It's what people just instantly attach to it because they're trying to make sense of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the craziest part about this is that really there seem to be multiple forms of these craft that are being reported, and one that stood out to me is one of the characteristics is that they're silent. I think the consensus is that they're definitely about 6 feet wide, or I think I've heard
the larger one.
Yeah, and they move eerily slow and quiet.
Right. The largest I've heard was 8 to 10 feet.
Okay.
But they do get smaller, and some do appear as quadcopters. So that I guess justifies some droniness to it.
Right.
And some of the media hype around drones. But then when the majority are being reported car size.
Right.
You know, agricultural drones are barely car size.
Right.
And then we don't even want to get into too much of what the Pentagon said because that was just ridiculous. So, and everyone jumped down their throat already. But to come out and say that these things are operating lawfully.
Right.
Any drone over like 250 grams has to be registered.
Right.
And you have to have the authority to fly it. Like, so that it makes it already unlawful to be operating these drones.
Yep.
So for Kirby to say that there was nothing even illegal going on, I guess I will address that very quickly, because the one interesting thing about that is that they pushed the lie too far. And intel and counter intel, they know all lies have to have a element of truth, and they have to be believable. And that was not believable.
Right.
For Kirby to come out and say, "Oh, everyone's just seeing airplanes and helicopters."
Right.
Yeah. Obviously, that was untrue. That the governor put out a video and said, "This is not an airplane or a helicopter that I'm looking at."
Yeah.
Senator Andy Kim did. So immediately they pushed the lie too far. It became very apparent that they had insulted the American people, because they did. And it also showed that they were not going to be honest. It also showed that they were going to be completely dishonest during this process, just like they were in February during the balloon debacle. So they are not saying anything. They're going to pretend like they're not really investigating it. We need more resources. We need more bodies. We need more detection equipment. So they're just going to keep playing this game.
Yep. And
that's how they're going to play this.
Yeah.
So, look, I would not spend a ton of time on the federal government. Like the complete lack of leadership from the Biden administration on this, complete lack of communication is disgusting. Like, this is how he will be remembered. That's not political. The election's over. This is how he will be remembered, as a coward, if he does not address this issue.
Yeah, they don't want to. They want to leave office before having to be the ones to they're the ones to say it.
You're like, couldn't you guys hold off for a few more months?
Yeah, I think it's like they're using the same tactics, they're misinformation tactics, but they're sticking around a lot longer this time, and now they have local officials and local news to contend with now.
Right. Thank you. So that's where I was going. So we just need to move past the federal government, and so things we can't do without federal government approval. You can't shoot anything down. Good. We shouldn't anyway.
Right.
So they can't and should not stop the study of these things. So we put together a comprehensive historical analysis of New Jersey. It's on the 14 Winds website. I spent all day yesterday doing this. Feel pretty good about it. It is all of the stuff that I would want to know if I were starting this investigation. So where are UAP normally seen? What shapes are they normally seen in New Jersey? And then also, like, what is the frequency around sensitive locations? And so we took the 4 sensitive locations that have been identified by the news media, which are the Raritan River Corridor, Naval Weapons Station Earl, Picatinny Arsenal, and Trump National Golf Club Bedminster. There's a chart. You can see it on the website. And it has frequency of UAP sightings within 15 miles of those sensitive locations through history. So what we find is that Raritan River Corridor is by far the place where historically UAP have been seen in New Jersey. So where I think that is relevant is I would look at that information. If someone said, now I need you to go out with this camera and go find a UAP, I would be looking at that information and go, oh, these are places where I might be more likely to go see them. So this is how hopefully this information might be helpful to like law enforcement.
Yes, definitely.
And then there's other background information in there, like reported UAP shapes and a heat map of sightings near those sensitive locations, which has latitude and longitude. Again, should be very helpful. And then the last thing I want to point out on that article that I really think would be helpful for law enforcement to do to get a better handle on this is there's 3 types of instruments that we're going to recommend for now, that IR, infrared, and I know that these are already being employed. But there's information that you may get from those devices that might indicate that these things are UAP that you weren't aware of. So one of those things is that they can avoid infrared detection. So they could be appearing on infrared and then not appear on infrared.
Right.
The other thing that they could do is appear as cloaked. So they're not visible, but they're appearing through the infrared. Those are behaviors that need to be recorded, and we can say, okay, we are dealing with UAP. And then the other instrument that we'd recommend is the thermal camera. And what you would see in a thermal that would indicate something anomalous is that it's not giving off a heat signature. And this has been recorded by a news crew and a sheriff's department already. They recorded one of these objects not giving off a heat signature. So that indicates that it's something likely anomalous. There are very few ways that you can avoid showing heat on a drone. Yeah. There's certain types of reactors that might do it. Like, that's it. But all batteries, all combustion give off heat. We don't know how to keep an object in the air and have it not give off heat. The laws of thermodynamics say that has to happen in order for us to give off energy. We have to give off heat, right? So when they say it's not defying the laws of physics, well, then how is it staying aloft and not giving off heat?
Right.
You're not going to have a good answer. So that means you're dealing with something anomalous. It doesn't say where it's from. It means you're dealing with something anomalous. So that's how thermal can help. And then once you realize, okay, these 2 other indicators say we're dealing with something anomalous, let's collect more information. Now you can start monitoring the electromagnetic field around these objects or where they're appearing more likely. There's already been reports of these things flying over cars and messing with radios. There's a great paper by Dr. Mark Rodiger about that exact thing, and those electromagnetic field effects have been recorded. They're scientifically known. So you can go collect those with a software-defined radio and a laptop or a dedicated device, a hack RF device, and you could do a frequency sweep. You can do signal detection. You can do spectrum analysis. You can see where on the electromagnetic spectrum these things are showing peaks. And then you can decode some signals.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, doing all that stuff isn't against the law. So go ahead and do it, and people are doing it.
That's right. It actually could be done by the public.
Yeah.
And then please share that information. We have to figure out a way to start collecting this information in the public somehow. Social media is not going to do it. Nope. It's going to take something a little better. We're trying to put together a timeline, but the situation is expanding so fast, and it's in so many different sources. Yeah. People are posting things to Twitter. Other people are posting things to Instagram. And how are we supposed to collect all that? Like, that we've got to figure out a repository and a better way to keep a timeline in this. If anyone has ideas, let us know. We'd be happy to put together a portion of the website for that.
One of the greatest examples that I've seen recently is that a local news had their camera concentrated on one of those orbs. And those things have showed up before many times, but this time it was different because it was being done by a professional photographer, with like a $20,000 camera.
Right. In full view of dozens of witnesses.
Yeah.
The debunkers afterwards, by the way, on those orbs are saying, those were out of focus.
It's bokeh.
And the dozens of people and the professional photographer on the ground are like, no, it was not.
No, you can tell. You can definitely tell it's not that. Because you would have, if you zoomed in that far into something, you have that distance between the lens and the source of light, right? And you have refraction. So when you're zoomed in like that, and if it's actually bokeh out of focus, it would be moving around. This orb was completely stationary except for in the middle of it where it was just swirling around. It was
Right. That's the strange thing. And then someone else caught a video of one of those swirling orbs that is not out of focus because the swirling is not out of focus.
right.
So the swirling orb is doing this, and then it turns into a friggin' drone. Supposedly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. I'll put a link to it. And so, yeah, I've seen multiple of those. And this is something that we said happens with UFOs. I think we could go back to our hypothesis and look at some of it and go, okay, we're getting some data.
Yeah.
Which parts of our hypothesis are true or not. And so, remember the so-called last episode where I was like, they're orbs. And then they turn into something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were right.
Yep.
I mean, that's exactly what it is. So that makes the other parts of the hypothesis more likely to be true. I think that gives me a little comfort.
Right.
This is a very weird time. So, and I talked to some folks who are like, the big heads have gone quiet. Right. Suddenly the influencers have nothing to say.
Right.
So, and I can understand that. I mean, but that's why I went back to what I know. I said, okay, let's do data. Let's get data on New Jersey, on historical sightings. And then figure out next steps. That's why that's so important. And then there was also, how do we collect data during this madness? And you and I just discussed how we're going to start standardizing data collection on this event.
Right. Yeah. So since, we have such a huge event developing in New Jersey, and it's been going on for some time now, we kind of can use that as a baseline, right? I mean, because it's showing up, it's kind of, I guess we could say it's spreading, but we use the characteristics of these craft that we see in New Jersey as a reference point, right? And then basically see if they're all related.
Right. For example, the description of the craft in New Jersey matched the one in Temecula, California. And by the way, that one in Temecula was just east of Camp Pendleton. The area that we identified as being a major hotspot for UAP is just west of Air Force Base McGuire.
Right.
The hotspot we had identified years ago as being oddly active for Jersey Devil sightings was just east of McGuire Air Force Base.
Right.
That's odd. And these are all around military bases, of course.
Of course. Yep.
And so when we did that full state analysis of New Jersey, that was the other thing that stuck out to us. Is if I were to sum it up in one sentence, it's these things seem to have a serious interest in the military.
For sure.
There's a lot of ways to look at that data. There's a lot of ways to look at the correlations. But one thing is for sure. These things are grouped around military bases. They have an interest in military sites. And then it's the military that's not talking.
It's really easy to call out their BS in this, but their tactic is basically to just say they're not a threat and we don't know what they are. Yeah, but they just won't say anything else other than that.
Right. And everyone's calling them out on the fact that you can't say they're not a threat if you don't know what
they are. Right.
So everyone's caught on to that, thank goodness. And then, but here's the weird thing, man, is why isn't anyone saying UFO yet?
Right, they won't. It's like they will not do it. That's their way of saying it. That we don't
not
know
even in the media.
I know.
Even the media is holding off. News Nation is getting the closest. Their reporting on this event has been fantastic.
Oh yeah, yep.
So I would tune into them if you're interested in what's going on. But that's it. There hasn't been, CNN has been stepping up. I have to say, I watched a half hour where. And they had Jake Tapper even saying, this whole story is not adding up. So this is kind of how you would expect this to happen.
Right.
But the crazy thing is that what the mainstream media is reporting and what is clearly visibly happening with video on social media is totally different.
Yep.
So what's really happening on the ground and what mainstream media is reporting is different. it's much more intense on the ground.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you talk about News Nation. That was one of the reports that really got to me. They had a reporter on the ground talking and just saying that what he saw just changed his whole belief system. He couldn't believe what he just witnessed. And I think he was talking about a V-shaped craft.
Yeah, so, right. V-shaped, those were reported by Kenneth Arnold back in the 1940s. But this, like a reporter filming these and dozens of them allowing themselves to be seen,
yeah,
they know they're being seen.
Oh, yeah.
And allowing it, this is unprecedented. This is like, I'm pretty familiar with UFO history at this point. There's nothing that is quite this big. And yesterday I had this wonder, this curiosity, where if these things disappeared tomorrow, would they be able to stuff this back in the box? Like the way that they did Phoenix Lights, the way that these things buzzed the White House in the 1950s. I've said that multiple times, and they managed to stuff this back in the box. And look, now you can see how. Because if these things stopped tomorrow, next year we'd be talking about the big drone affair of last year.
Right.
That'd be it.
Right.
That would be it. Hundreds of UFOs, maybe thousands, in the air right now being videoed. And if they turned away from it, the public would turn away from it too.
Yep.
That's bizarre, man. There is something very real here that I wanted to explore before all this blew up, which I'm just calling our UFO blind spot, our societal UFO blind spot. And I think this is maybe something we could explore with data. Like, there is a very weird societal amnesia and insistence on ignoring this. And it seems almost more than prosaic. And maybe it is. I don't know. We've got to get in there and look. But if these things stop showing up next year, it'll be basically forgotten.
You're right. It's almost like, we want to forget about it because it's just too much to comprehend. We'll just associate them with something we understand, which is like a drone, and then we'll brush it aside.
Right. Humans have a natural tendency to go towards what's comfortable, and this is not comfortable. No. I get that, but it is real. And if we want to find out about it, this is a hell of an opportunity to collect some data. So, like that spectral data, I've been trying to get a hold of good spectral data for years. We can test some of that spectral data for quantum coherence. We can test it for all sorts of things. We can find out which signals they're on. We can interpret this. Like, this is an opportunity, but you got to say the word UFO.
Right.
or UAP, I guess we're going to allow that one too. And that just means unidentified. How are you calling these things drones when they're unidentified?
No, we need a congressman to just kind of whisper in the mic during a hearing, just be like, go ahead and say it. Go ahead.
And this is exposing just such a hole in the whole system, man. Yeah. Because who is making this call? It's not the president. Who is making this call? Who is in charge? This is showing us that the president's not really in charge, man. Yeah. Congress is not really in charge. They do not have the ability to address this.
Well, then
our elected officials are not in charge. Who is?
So you're saying Lockheed Martin?
Well,
did you just say that?
I did not. Gosh, are you trying to get me thrown through another plate glass window?
Yeah, right.
I just got the glass out of my last fedora. So, well, look, if you want to go there, the one article we have that points to the people that know, and this is what we've said before, it's big money and big science. Of course it's that. Who else would know?
Right.
Big money was there at the founding of the CIA. The CIA was founded just after they got the crash. So all of those people knew about it. All of those big money families, and we identify the 5 in the article, And I just don't want to go through all that right now. But those big money families, the oligarchs in the U.S., they got involved in intelligence, and then they kept their kids in intelligence over the years. Like the Bushes, the Mellons, those people always have their family members in intelligence because they're looking out for whatever interests. So, but they've known about this.
Yeah.
Is it them? Is it them making the call? Is it the most wealthy, powerful people that have had some control over our intelligence for the last 80 years? Seems likely. I don't have direct proof yet.
Right.
But that, if you want me to go, who's the most likely suspect? There you go.
Yeah.
And we've been right about UAP every time we've been willing to cast the light on a suspect. Like, we don't do that lightly.
Right. Now, to go completely kind of opposite, there are suggestions that these things are related to bodies of water. Have you heard enough evidence about that? Because
I've heard enough evidence to say that at least some of these things are coming from the ocean.
Yeah.
So I've both witnessed reports and then I've heard stuff internally like that. That is a hot button issue. They're coming from the ocean. Now, does that mean these things were aquatic all along? That would fit into that crypto-terrestrial theory.
Yeah.
It's into a lot of things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It could be an ET species that's aquatic. It could just be that they have bases underwater. It makes a lot of sense.
Right.
So we don't know why, but yeah, they do seem to be coming from under the water. And then if you look at our analysis, it shows that Raritan River corridor as being the hottest spot among the sensitive sites. So I think that's a good tip. You could put all sorts of frequency detectors and IR and thermal along that corridor.
Yeah. The last thing I want to bring up, it just sticks in my head, is that I mentioned it last episode, is that there was talk of them being on a pretty predictable schedule. I find that really fascinating. They know when they're coming. They're not even hiding when they show up.
So the hours that they're showing up are between 5 and 11 p.m. with the highest frequency that they're seen the most.
Right.
So they want to be seen between 5 and 11 p.m.
Yeah.
That we can say for sure. And those are the hours when you are awake. It is nighttime, and you could be looking at the sky.
Right.
Those are the hours that you're home from work. They know this. So whoever it is, right, behind it all, knows all of that. And they're showing up in the hours when they are most likely to be seen by the public.
Yeah.
Because they know what the government is going to say, that it's not really happening.
Right.
Don't look up. That's basically what we're getting. Don't look up.
Right.
So I do want to tie this in because we started to talk about the frequencies, and I want to get some of this research out because I don't know how much time we have. And some of this, I think, is important to whatever's going to happen next. And I couldn't imagine a more important article that we have going than the one we wanted to talk about, which was Alien Abductions, The Switch. And I want to talk about that in the context of this because we were talking about this as being a method or a way that potentially people who are victims of unwanted contact could turn it off. I thought that was terrible. But we always thought, and we sat on the information for a while because we were like, this is a method for contact. And we don't know where that would lead. So we just sat on it for a little while, thought about it, tried to process it. But it's all out now. So it's all in that article. It's called Alien Abductions, The Switch. And in it, we identify a study where the scientists had studied the brains of people who were experiencing something like alien abductions. And they had this unique brain effect. It was a state of hyperarousal on their prefrontal cortex was extremely activated. And they had this 40 hertz signal hitting their brain. So we go through all of that. And in the article, and we talk about how it could be turned on, and we talk about how it could be turned off. And there's a number of different ways that you could get your brain into that state. But one of the things that I would point out is that when we talked about this remote viewing, we thought this was a good follow-on, is that people talk about needing to get into a flow state. Again, to draw this back to the drones, like people are saying that when they're looking at the drones, they're turning off. They know
Right.
that they're being observed. So if they're aware of your consciousness. So contact would occur in something more like a meditative flow state, and then this is something that contactees normally talk about. There are mediums in New Jersey who are saying that they have had contact with this sort of craft and that they've been receiving these sort of contacts. We talked about how remote viewing is real. So yes, I think a remote viewer who is in a meditative state, as crazy as it sounds, in that location near New Jersey might be able to make contact. You could validate the contact by saying, tell the craft to do this, and then see what happens.
Right.
We would need to know that there's real contact happening before we could trust any messages that would come across. And if these beings, which they have at times with Chris Bledsoe and other contactees, have been willing to validate themselves and say, yes, it's me. Yes, I'm that through blinking lights or movements in the sky that you ask for, then we would know. And then the telepathic communication, we could at least trust is coming from them to the source. Then we'd have to deal with it on our own.
Oh, that's interesting. So
yeah.
So I mean, you mentioned Chris Bledsoe. So that's practically what he's doing. He's going into a meditative state and he's able to basically control this phenomenon.
Exactly. I don't think he even calls it all that, but yeah,
Right.
It's a trance-like state, and that is what other contactees have done and do in order to get there. But it's a state of deep relaxation, and then it's also, but it's a contradictory moment because it's a state of hyper-arousal and hyper-focus. So something in that state activates your brain and gets it into this other contact state. So please check out the article. As crazy as it sounds, it couldn't be more important than now. And we also, in that article, it's very long, but in the end, there's a entire appendix that talks about technical means where this could be achieved or directions for contact. So this is the moment. Like this is why we did all this sort of research.
Right.
So, it's all there. And there's people out there that are interested and have the resources and want to do this. And it's going to have to be done by the public. It's going to have to be done by local government, by local law enforcement. The federal government is just leaving us on our own on this one. And I will say this briefly, been asked about it a number of times. And I said, I don't want to talk about this because I don't have proof yet. And what I don't have proof yet of is the nature of an agreement between the United States government and these beings, whatever they are.
Yeah.
But now I have enough proof to say there has been some sort of agreement. There was contact and there was some sort of agreement made. Multiple people from inside the program have said that is their understanding, but they do not know what the agreement was.
Right.
The rumor that gets tossed around the most is that it was, yes, you can continue alien abductions and we won't interfere if you give us technology. Sure makes a lot of sense. Haven't seen proof, but I'm not going to hold that back anymore because this is the moment. And the federal government sure as hell is acting like that's the case. So you want us to trust you? Start talking.
Yeah, but they're showing up now. So does that mean we breached the agreement or what?
Right. There's this other conversation happening. There's this other conversation happening between these UFO gatekeepers or control group or whatever you want to call it, and these beings. And this is a product of that conversation. And we don't even know what that conversation is about.
Yeah.
They won't even tell us the existence of the other party in that conversation.
Right.
So it's you can't do this to 365 million people.
You can't, but you can, and they will. It just depends on how long this phenomenon is going to last. Right now, we are in an unprecedented time where it's finally showing itself and wants to be seen. And like you said, it is up to the people on the ground now, and that's really who we're looking up to now. We're looking up to local officials, sheriff's offices.
That's right.
That's all we have, and ourselves.
We need leadership at the local level. So, and I think what that would take, let's give some actionable steps. I think what that would take, because there's some assemblymen and women who are really into this, especially in New Jersey. So I think what that would take is that you calling for experts in the field to study the electromagnetic field effects, to study the instrument data, and then say, this is what we're dealing with. Call for experts who have seen these and are familiar with the papers from the Ukraine. It's not the first time that these things have been seen.
Right.
So we have data, but you're going to have to call them in. Someone's going to have to pony up some cash. And there's got to be some millionaires out there that are sitting there waiting for this moment.
Right.
But there are a ton of different ways. We mentioned them in the article. There's a ton of different low cost. We only work with cheap equipment. So there's a ton of low cost ways that you can go about gathering this data. So it's there. Go for it. Nothing is stopping you from studying and gathering more information about what is affecting your community.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, none of this is new. So we have past experiences. We have data from the past. It goes decades. That is completely related to all of this. I mean, we could even go back to, the 17th century in Germany? Wasn't there...
We can go back to Rome.
Yeah, right. We talk about it all the time when it comes to how these things show up there around military complexes. The biggest pattern that we've seen is that when there is a movement of nuclear weapons, when those things are moved around is usually when those orbs usually show up. And we do have evidence of orbs showing up again. We saw it in Iraq, which could have been related to depleted uranium rounds or something like that. Or there's so many different cases.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, we need to remember that this is nothing new. However, the intensity is wildly new.
Yeah.
And the only people that will probably know the answer to that are human are these UFO gatekeepers. So our only hope of exposing that conversation is an absolute and intense demand on our government, which we pay for and vote for and outnumber. We need to say, you need to tell us this now. Enough is enough. And that has to come from everyone everywhere, because this is getting more intense. It's spreading.
Yeah. And it's an opportunity. And we got to say that over and over again. This is our opportunity to gather as much data as possible. It's happening now.
Right. We all wanted disclosure for years. This is the opportunity that we can get the whole public on our side.
Right.
That's a good way to end it for this time. I mean, a little optimism.
Definitely. And we know it's a developing story, so we'll for sure be talking about it real soon.
Yeah, I think we'll probably pop back in later in the week.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, thanks a lot, Ram. And thanks for listening, everyone. This is the 14 Wins podcast. You going to say goodbye?
Oh, yeah, goodbye.